if you're going to do some estate planning, good for you, first of all. It's a smart thing to do. And Nicholas, you can help them here. Let's talk about this, or you talk about it, on doing wills and trusts and such.
Yes, we love estate planning. We are a legacy law firm. Yes, we do business transactions. We also do a lot of estate planning. And as far as we know, 9 out of 10 of us aren't making it off planet Earth alive. And what happens when we're transitioning to heaven? Oh. Well, the good news is, whether you know it or not, you have an estate plan. The bad news is, if you haven't created one yourself, it's the government's. And it's whatever the state has dictated through the centuries, that's your estate plan. And nowadays, modern 21st century, we have what might be called modern families, where there's blended multiple spouses and exes and children. And the moment you have a modern family, you're way outside the scope of what the statutory law will dictate. And then additionally, if you don't have an estate plan, guess what? You're going to the courts and you are dealing with government interference. And I don't know about you, Randy, but I am not a fan when I have to deal with the government. Whether it's going to the BMV, whether it's getting my passport updated, anytime we're interacting with the government, it just seems paperwork upon fees, upon time delays, upon what's going on. And unfortunately, I want to say it's about 65% of the US does not have an estate plan. And heaven forbid something happens and they don't, now they're forced to follow the state law in how the estate plan is to be dictated. They're forced to go to the courts. They're forced to pay a tremendous amount of fees. And then engaging a probate lawyer ends up costing 2, 3, 10 times what it would have cost to simply set it up. The old adage in this case, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, is absolutely applicable here. And so if you're human, we're probably not going to make it off planet Earth. And if you're a US citizen and you love your family, then you probably want to consider getting an estate plan set up.
Well, let's talk about that some more. So, and that you're talking, there's wills, there's trusts. Now, here's a question. What's the difference? If I have a will, why would I need a trust?
Yes, it's a great question, and people ask us this all the time. What's a will? I've heard of a will, but trust, that's just for rich people. Like, oh, we don't have that much money. Like, well, let's clarify here. A will is the legal document required to show the government that we're gone. So as a reminder, the government regulates us from birth to death. We get a birth certificate, we get a marriage certificate, driver's license, death certificate. And when we die, we must notify the government that we have died. And then there's either a will or not. And if there is a will, that could be enough. When there's a will, it's now public record. You're now dealing with the probate courts, depending on if there's a home, if there's some accounts, if there's a certain number of heirs. Now you have court involvement, now you have all sorts of friction, and it can be quite onerous, especially when it's a time of grieving. Whereas with the trust, and there's a couple different kinds, but with the trust, you avoid that. You don't have to share with anybody. It's a private document. And so when you have a trust, you have a very simple will that is called a pour-over will, which pours everything into the trust. So you go to the court, show the death certificate, show the pour-over will, they stamp it, you pay your $35 court fee, and you're done. No more interaction with the court at all. And now there's the trust document that governs your wishes. And not only is that in itself worth getting a trust, then factor in the family dynamics. Maybe we have multiple children. Maybe there's grandchildren. Maybe we have nieces and nephews that we want to pass some amount on. Maybe there's charity. Maybe we have great grandma's ring. Maybe we have grandpa's World War II gun. What do we do with these items? Well, in a trust, we can very clearly articulate who is the family, what are the assets, and how are they flowing to our heirs. And additionally, one of the beautiful protections of a trust is what happens if, heaven forbid, we're hit by a bus and now our minor children is inheriting a house. and $500,000. And all of a sudden now our 13-year-old has to pay property taxes, has to figure out the utility bills, has to realize that they can go buy as many pizzas as they want and buy PlayStations for everybody. And unfortunately, these things happen. And with the trust, protect it. What happens if there's a special needs child? What happens if there's an heir that maybe has a drug challenge or a gambling situation?
You can set guide rails in a sense in a trust.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So not only can you provide for your heirs, you can protect them from others.
Sometimes from
also
themselves.
From themselves.
Yeah. Geez. Yeah.
Exactly.
And nobody knows your family better than you do.
Exactly. And so again, don't let the government dictate what's going on in your family. You be in control.
So Nicholas, how do you help a family decide whether or not it should be a will or it should be a trust?
Yeah, great question. Will or trust? Will or trust? And usually the answer goes down to what's your family dynamic like? Simple family dynamic? No children? One child? All going to charity? Very simple. Might be sufficient just to have a will. Next, what do your assets look like? Maybe you don't own a home. Maybe you don't have much money. Maybe you have your one child. Fantastic. You don't need to do anything fancy. When there starts to be a different family dynamic, maybe there's a couple children, maybe there's grandchildren, maybe there's a child from a previous marriage, maybe there's a second wife or a husband that has their children. Now we start to really think heavily about a trust. And then addition, when it comes to assets, when somebody owns a home, maybe there's a couple $100,000 in retirement accounts, usually you want to start thinking of trust. If there's a business, usually you want to think about a trust. If there's multiple properties, multiple businesses, if there's millions of dollars, you really want to be thinking about a trust.
Definitely.
And then as we're really starting to build our wealth, there's that threshold of no estate tax, which is the euphemism for death tax. Again, we get taxed at all aspects of life in the US, and we get taxed when we die. And thankfully, the current law, thanks to the recent 2025 big, beautiful bill, locked in that the estate tax under $15 million per person is 0.
Wow.
And if you're married, 30. However, what happens when you have a great success, a successful exit, and now you're sitting on 40 million, 50 million, 100 million? Maybe you inherited this from your great grandfather and it's only grown. Well, if you don't put it in a certain type of irrevocable trust, which is different than revocable, then when you're gone, that amount over 15 million, again, 30 if you're married, is subject to up to 40, and depends on your state. In California, up to 55% of that excess is just deleted, just gone. So say you have $50 million and you're not married, well, 35 million is going to be cut in half. And so it's relatively simple to set up the appropriate trusts, move the money outside of your estate, and now it could be 20 million, it could be 20 billion, and there's no estate tax. And not only is that phenomenal, it also provides asset protection, meaning once the assets are out of your estate, technically you control them, but you don't own them. So it goes back to the old Rockefeller mantra of own nothing, control everything. And the moment you have these assets out of your name, you can't get sued for them. The government can't take them. You can't mess up yourself or your heir's gambling addiction, can't get access to it. That's really preserved forever. And the only way, once you have this locked up, that you can fail is if you become a terrorist, branded as a traitor. If the U.S. falls,
Really? Branded
do
as
any of that, then the U.S. can confiscate it. But otherwise, the U.S. or any government body cannot get access to those funds.
Hey, for absolute clarity, there's a revocable trust?
Yes.
Irrevocable trust. Just what's the difference? Basic difference.
Revocable means you can change it anytime. Irrevocable means Theoretically, you can't change it, but we can incorporate provisions that allow for break glass in case of emergency.
And why would I not want the ability to change it?
That is when you put it out of your estate and you don't own it anymore.
Okay.
You can control it, but you don't own it. And there's a lot of benefits. When we have assets, when the wealth is a certain level, also in a special needs situation, also in a Medicaid, Medicare situation, where if you want government benefits, then you have to have less than $2,000 to your name. You can't own your own home. You can't have $2,500. You cannot have that if you want the full benefits of the government. And so you simply move all your assets out of your estate into an irrevocable trust, and now you can get full government access while still controlling those assets.